This is the Radically Realistic Podcast. I'm Susanna LaPointe, a 14-year personal training and nutrition coaching veteran. My wellness coaching practice incorporates strength, nutrition, and self-care. Because while fitness and nutrition are very important, they are just the tip of the iceberg as far as taking really amazing care of ourselves goes. So I incorporate all other types of self-care practices into my coaching as well. I call this podcast Radically Realistic because when it comes to implementing sustainable habits and practices to improve ourselves or our lives, they must be realistic and they must fit into our current lives. Otherwise, they won't stick. And then what even is the point? Join me each week as we explore another aspect of taking amazing care of ourselves through a lens of being super realistic about what we can and will actually fit into our lives. Let's get started with today's show. Hey, friends. Thanks for tuning in today to the Radically Realistic Podcast. Always super grateful that you take the time to listen. So if you are here, I appreciate you, and I am very grateful that you are here. So thank you. Today, I'm excited because I'm going to start the conversation about the never-ending topic and confusion and dilemma of nutrition. So many people are so confused about what and when and how much to eat because there are so many different diet programs and philosophies out there. And I know that to the average person, it can be absolutely maddening and super frustrating to try to navigate and figure out what the right thing for that person is. So I have decided to roll this out over several episodes in the next coming weeks and months, in which I'm going to discuss all different aspects of nutrition and the common myths and ideas that are making the rounds these days that are just not serving us. So I'm going to kind of sprinkle those in among other episodes. I usually decide on my episodes fairly intuitively, kind of just like whatever's kind of stirring at my heart that week. And so I'm going to sprinkle that in among the nutrition episodes. So we'll just kind of get a well-rounded, topic roundup here coming up. So I want to just clear up some of the conversation or clear up some of the confusion and help you understand how to know how to best eat for your own unique biology and lifestyle and preferences. So that is what is going to be coming up in the next few weeks and months. The topic of nutrition is a confusing one for most people. There is so much conflicting information out there, and having been in this industry for 14 years now, I have heard so many conversations, I've done so much research, I've learned so much, and I can 1000% understand why humans would still be confused about what the fuck to eat, because there's just too many informations floating around. I am going to talk about my diet journey in a story in another episode. But I will start by saying that before 2006, I never gave a second thought to anything I put in my mouth. And it wasn't until I became, quote, educated, quote, about nutrition that I dove headfirst into a 13-year disordered eating journey, along with 3 years inside that 13 years of a full-blown eating disorder. And for those of you who don't know the difference, or if you're confused by the terms disordered eating / eating disorder. An eating disorder is like a diagnosable thing. The main ones are anorexia, bulimia, which is what I struggled with, which is the binging and purging. Anorexia is just like not eating like nearly enough calories to support your activity in your life. And then there's binge eating disorder, which is just where you binge constantly. And I don't know, there's probably a few other ones in there too, but those are the 3 main ones. Disordered eating is just kind of obsession and counting and like preoccupation with thinking about food all the time. That was me for so long. The whole 13 years, I was constantly researching and counting and making myself meal plans and just obsessing about different ways of eating and trying to find the perfect way to eat that would allow me to eat as much as I wanted to. And it was just crazy. Literally, like 90% of my brain's real estate was taken up by thoughts of food. And I have moved past that now, thank God. And it's probably about 4% of my brain is taken up with thoughts of food. Like, it's like, am I hungry? Okay, let's eat something. What should I eat? Okay, I'll make it and then move on. But it used to be like an all consuming, all day thing. And I know that not everybody relates with this. But for those of you who do, you know what a trap and what a mind fuck it is to be constantly thinking about food. When am I going to eat next? How much did I eat? Oh shoot, I binged. Well, I might as well, eat the rest of the crap and then start over on Monday. Like, just these constant thoughts of food consuming your brain is exhausting and also holding you back from like life, doing life, being alive, having relationships with other people, pursuing hobbies, building a business. Like, it just holds you back from so much. So I'm sure you can tell I'm fairly passionate about this because I have been through the ringer with nutrition and I feel like I've come out on the other side. So glad that I went through that experience, but also really intent on wanting to help other women get out of it faster than it took me, because it literally took me 13 years. Like, I was in it and it took me like 13 years to find my way out of it. So if I can at all help anyone get out of that faster, that is one of my main missions in life, because I know what an awful place it is to be in that constant obsession with food. So, okay. Anyways, I'm going to move on now. But, so I have boiled my philosophy down to just a few sentences now, from kind of like this all over. Like, I tried literally every way of eating that you can think of. I subscribed to paleo and veganism and fruitarianism and keto and everything in between. I tried all of them obsessively. I researched, I listened to podcasts, I like read books. It was crazy. So I've tried everything for you, so you don't have to. You're welcome. Just kidding. But I've tried them all, and where I have arrived is what I'm going to be talking about today. And this is my nutrition philosophy, what I'm going to be talking about today. So many of you have probably heard Michael Pollan, who has authored the book The Omnivore's Dilemma, among other books. But his kind of famous food philosophy is this: eat food, not too much, mostly plants. And I love that. But I have elaborated on it for my own purposes because I agree with that, but I wanted to clarify some things. So this is my food philosophy, expanded on that one. Eat mostly whole foods most of the time. Not too much, but also not too little. Mostly plants. And blood sugar balance is first priority. So that's my philosophy. So I'm going to break down my philosophy in an easy to understand way today. That way, if you decide that you don't like it, then you know where I stand and you can choose to continue listening to the other episodes or not. I don't want you to waste your time if you don't agree with me, or if my philosophy doesn't make sense to you, or you think something else. That's 1,000% fine. Everyone is totally entitled to their own opinion, especially when it comes to nutrition, which is a huge emotional thing for most people. It's crazy actually how passionate people are about nutrition and like the philosophy that they believe in. And I've been there as well, and I totally get it. So I just want to just lay it out where I stand. So if you think that makes sense and you agree, then you may want to listen to the rest of the episodes that I'm going to be talking about nutrition in, so you can learn how to understand what works best for your own body. That's the main tenet, is like figuring out what works best for you. And yeah, so I'm going to break it down. My philosophy has changed a lot over the last 13 years, so I'm going to break it down now. Okay, point number 1. Eat mostly whole foods most of the time. I added the whole adjective to the word to the word food, because I think it's really important. I know that's what he meant, was like eat food, real food. That's what he meant, Michael Pollan, when he wrote that quote, eat food. But I added whole to just kind of like identify that as like mostly whole foods should take up the majority of our diets. And mostly is important because we also do have to have wiggle room for, the odd fun food that is maybe not a whole food. But let me just kind of explain where I'm at here. I believe it's important to eat food in its most unprocessed form as often as possible. And obviously, if you want to process it yourself into something like a recipe, that's great. But keeping your food as minimally processed as possible before you get to it is the key. Think like plain cuts of meat without any seasonings or marinades or breadedness that has happened to them already before you get to them. Fresh fruits and vegetables, totally minimally processed. Although, and I'll mention this a couple times, but pre-cut up vegetables and fruit in the produce section at the grocery store are great. Like it's technically processed by someone else, but it's still a whole food, and it can cut down on your prep time and make it so you're more likely to eat them. So, definitely going for whole fruits and vegetables, but having them pre-cut up or pre-chopped or whatever is great. Huge time saver. And obviously there's a lot of things that we can't help that are hugely in lots of recipes, like a can of tomatoes. Obviously those are processed, but it's mostly whole. I mean, it's been, cooked and cut up, but it's the ingredients in a can of tomatoes should be tomatoes and possibly salt. That's it. So that type of thing I think is great, and obviously used in a lot of recipes. We can't all like take fresh tomatoes, especially in the winter, and like process them down and use them. So like shortcuts like that are great and fine and necessary. But I just want you to think about it this way, because it is unrealistic to expect that everyone's going to make everything out of fresh whole foods all the time that have been completely untouched. So look at the label, the ingredient label on whatever it is you're going to buy. And this, can be a little bit time consuming and tedious at first, but once you get used to it, it's fairly easy to scan the label and see if you recognize everything on the ingredient list. Because there should be no stabilizers or gums or preservatives or chemicals or strange sugar substitutions in the food that you are buying and consuming, because that stuff is obviously not real food, and it's definitely not anything your body recognizes, and it doesn't process those things well because it doesn't know that it's food. It's like, what the fuck is this weird foreign thing? And over time, consuming those things over and over again can cause problems, can lead to cancer, can lead to type 2 diabetes down the road, like all these additives and things that they put in the processed food to make it taste better or crunch better or have this like super addictive quality to them they're all things that our body does not recognize as actual food. And so it takes extra work on our body's part to break them down. Oftentimes it stores stuff like that as fat because it doesn't recognize it as real food. It doesn't really know what to do with it, so it'll like store it away in the fat cells. And it just ends up being like not a great thing for us to be consuming. So obviously, once in a great while, these things are totally fine. But on the whole, if we keep our foods as unprocessed as possible, or if you do buy something processed, like say in the freezer section, if you find some organic enchiladas, if you look at the label on it, you should recognize everything in those enchiladas as a food product, as a whole food that has been processed down into these enchiladas that are pre-made for you to take and like heat up in the oven or the microwave conveniently. There shouldn't be like a stabilizing gum in the enchilada sauce. The corn tortillas shouldn't have like a bunch of chemicals in them. Like, looking at the label and understanding the things in the label as whole food ingredients before it turned into this processed enchilada, which is totally fine and totally necessary a lot of the time, because we just don't have the time or mental energy to like make every single thing from scratch. I totally understand that. And I don't either. So anyways, mostly whole foods most of the time. That's point number one. Just as a reminder, whole food examples are fish, eggs, meat, just plain, that you season and cook yourself. Whole grains that you cook yourself, like brown rice or quinoa, or my favorite, farro, one of my favorites. Super chewy, delicious grain, so tasty on salads. canned beans or vegetables that just have the one ingredient, maybe plus some salt. Fruits and vegetables, of course, that are whole or minimally processed. And then like those, like the salad mixes that have a bunch of, cabbage and Brussels sprouts and kale, like all chopped up and put in a bag. I love those. I don't love the dressings in them all the time or the little crunchy things, but if those are the things that get you to eat salads, I'd rather have you eating salads than not. So that's kind of sort of processed and sort of not. And then any just pure spices and seasonings. Seasoning mixes can have some strange things in them, so just kind of keep an eye on that if it's not like an organic spice mix or something that you know what is in it. Just look at the label to see that everything is an actual real food ingredient. There shouldn't be anything weird or like a number or like a color added to anything that you eat. So as far as the, quote, most of the time, quote, part goes, we can leave room for occasional fun foods. These are foods that may not be especially nourishing or may not be necessarily made of 100% whole food ingredients, but they do feed our soul in certain circumstances. For example, a pizza. I'm pretty sure everyone can agree that pizza is one of the most delicious things that is available to us in this lifetime. It is one of the things also that causes a huge blood sugar spike, which is the case with most fun foods, as they are usually a combination of highly processed flour and a lot of fat. But having pizza once in a while is totally fine. And it does literally feed our soul. Like sometimes like only a pizza will do it. And that's fine. Like once a week, once every couple weeks, not a daily thing and not like a multiple time a week thing for optimal health, which is what I'm hoping everyone here is looking for, is optimal health. But just occasionally having something that's super delicious, add a big old salad to it, get some nutrients from other things too. That actually, I always have a huge giant salad when I have pizza because it cuts down on the amount of pizza I eat, and it also adds a bunch of nutrients and hydration and minerals and vitamins and vegetables and fiber and other things that sort of kind of balance out the less optimal aspects of an actual pizza. But pizza itself, and I'm just using that as an example, it could be anything. It could be a cupcake, it could be nachos, whatever it is that is like, kind of your favorite less than healthy food. You can balance it out with something healthy. Make sure you're having protein with it. Make sure you have vegetables with it. Or if it's a cupcake, make sure you have all that stuff beforehand. You probably don't want to eat vegetables with a cupcake. That is not a great combination. But anyways, these foods just feed our soul, and there is no substitute for that. I used to try to avoid anything I did not deem like perfect and healthy, only to eat everything around that thing, and then I ended up eating that thing anyways. So if you just eat it in the first place, when you're kind of in that mood or craving it, and I don't mean like craving it every single day. I mean like, on Friday night, it's pizza night with your family or whatever, and that's totally fine. Have it. Have a salad, try to minimize the kind of damage that it can cause to your blood sugar and everything, and then move on. And don't have a bunch of mental anguish around it. That's all. Like, just move on. The next meal can be super healthy. You don't need to, like, have it spiral into brownies and ice cream and more bread and the rest of the pizza and everything else because you ate the pizza in the first place. Have the thing. Be satisfied, enjoy it, enjoy every bite of it, and then move on to the next activity. And don't keep thinking about it. Okay, moving on. Second principle, not too much, but also not too little. And this is where kicking diet culture to the curb comes into play. Diet culture has us thinking that we have been eating way too much and now we must eat much less in order to lose weight or be healthy. The real story is that in order for us to be healthy, we need to do the hard work of figuring out what quantity of what foods and what frequency works best for us individually. No one can tell you the exact right answer, and anyone who says they can is a liar. In order for you to figure out a sustainable way to eat for the rest of your life, you must have a little education on nutrition and then start experimenting and practicing. Only through experimenting and becoming mindful of your own biofeedback which are your physical reactions to what you are eating, can you know what serves you the best and makes you feel the best, your absolute best, makes you feel vital with lots of energy and positive attitude and optimistic and light on your feet and not weighed down and bloated and heavy because the foods that you chose were too heavy for you. So I would say about 30% of the clients I work with are habitually eating much too little. We can thank diet culture for this too, but somehow we all believe that we are supposed to be eating 1,200 calories a day, which is actually a starvation level of calories. But you would not believe how many clients I work with that are eating 1,200 calories a day, thinking that's how much they need to eat in order to lose weight. And the thing is they are all uncomfortable and unhappy in their own skin. Most likely because they are being undernourished and their blood sugar is not stable and they feel like crap all the time. So, the problem with eating a starvation level of calories is that eating that much under what your body actually requires to function will downregulate your metabolism pretty quickly. And this is why diets don't work. Because every time one cuts calories, exercises more, and creates a huge energy deficit, which is what we are told is how you lose weight, your body downregulates your metabolism to make it so that you don't need as many calories to survive. When one inevitably goes back to eating the way they did before, because our bodies always kind of pull us back to that set point of what we were doing before, we are no longer processing that original amount of calories, and that number is decreased, causing one to gain all that weight back and usually more. Again, this is why diets do not work. The antidote and rebellion to this is to not listen to these crazy diet gurus that are out there that are claiming that you need to eat their special way in order to have results. And actually get really mindful and introspective about what works for you and what doesn't. What makes you feel good? What gives you energy? What stabilizes your blood sugar and what actually doesn't? We are not taught to be mindful about our nutrition. We are taught to follow a meal plan that someone else invented. From my perspective, having some education and understanding around nutrition and what foods actually do for your body, to your body, how they react in your body is the only way that you can actually take ownership over your own nutrition and learn how to eat for the rest of your life. Because if you're arbitrarily following other people's diets forever, you are never going to learn what actually works for you. And you've got to figure that out at some point in time. So that is really what I am here to help you figure out over the next several episodes on this nutrition topic is like how to make this work for you long term and work forever and figure out what you actually need, what you like, what works best in your body and for your lifestyle and your preferences and your activity level and what is actually realistic for you. It's not someone else's diet plan. That's the answer. In order to have food freedom and be at peace with your body and your nutrition, eventually you will have to go through this process. Most people hit multiple diets along the way and they never figure out that diets don't work. And they're just constantly looking for the next answer and the next thing, but it's not there. The only true way is to really get clinical and honest with yourself and do the hard work and put in the practice of figuring out how you can eat long term that sustains you, satisfies you, and helps you reach your goals. Again, it's not eating too much and not eating too little and doing the work that it takes to figure out where the sweet spot is for you. And again, I will say that nobody else can figure this out for you. Okay, next point, mostly plants. Even if you are a meat eater, your diet should contain or mostly consist of plants. This means taking in a lot of the whole plant-based foods, fresh vegetables and fruits, along with your protein. Protein is hugely important, and I will always say that. But all of the fiber and minerals and micronutrients and vitamins and antioxidants all come from plant-based foods, and those are all essential for good health. So on a plate, if you look at it, about a quarter of it should be your protein, and the rest of the 3/4 should be plant foods. This could include some roasted potatoes and sauteed greens. If it fills up about 3/4 of your plate, I would say it's mostly plants. So you could say, yes, I eat mostly plants. If you have a big old salad and have some protein on top, again, mostly plants. If you have a piece of sprouted grain bread, which is processed plants, but it's minimally processed, along with some eggs and some avocado and maybe some greens, again, mostly plants. So don't let the mostly plants thing confuse you, because I think most of us eat mostly plants anyways, but a lot of them have been processed into unrecognizable plant foods. Like Doritos, for example, are probably made with mostly plants, but none of it is recognizable as an actual whole food anymore. So that is a distinction between like processed crap and real whole plant food. Okay, and my last point is blood sugar balance is top priority. Honestly, without this point, I feel like the other ones are much less effective. You can have a completely unbalanced blood sugar eating a plant-based diet. You can have unbalanced blood sugar eating mostly unprocessed foods. In order to make sure your blood sugar is balanced, we need a combination of protein, either animal or plant protein, unprocessed carbs, and natural fats. Think salmon, roasted potatoes, sauteed spinach, and avocado. A meal like this, and obviously you could swap out any protein source, including a vegan protein source like lentils or beans, which is often what I do, for the salmon, or you could swap out chicken or grass-fed beef or whatever. Or you can swap out any other vegetables, another starchy carbohydrate for the potatoes, or another green vegetable for the spinach, or maybe some nuts instead of the avocado for fat. Like you obviously can work within this range, but having a healthy balance of protein, carbohydrates, and natural fats will keep your blood sugar super stable for hours. As opposed to a more unbalanced option like just protein or just potatoes or just spinach or just avocado. Having all these things together provides muscle support and satiety in the protein, satisfaction and satiety from the potatoes, fiber and lots of micronutrients from the greens, and fullness and satisfaction from the avocado. I know that our meals do not always look like this, but shooting for this type of template, a balance, a solid source of protein, a tasty and nourishing carbohydrate source, and lots of green stuff will ensure that your blood sugar stays stable. And when your blood sugar is stable, it frees up a whole lot of time, energy, and mental space because you aren't constantly navigating hunger, cravings, and unstable energy. This is truly where your power lies. Almost every single one of my clients, when I explain how and why to balance their blood sugar, says, OMG, this makes so much sense and I've never heard this before. And I'm not sure why this isn't a bigger conversation, but I'm guessing it's because stable blood sugar doesn't sell. And no one makes money off of it if you don't become diabetic. So that's disgusting and wrong, but a conversation for another day. So anyways, I 100% understand that feeding ourselves well is a really big job. It takes a lot of effort and mental energy that a lot of us just don't feel like we have, especially right now, and especially those of us who have small children at home or, working a full-time job and dealing with kids' Zoom school during this pandemic. I know there's not a lot of extra time. And it's so frustrating sometimes, and it gets really hard to continually feed ourselves healthy food that tastes good and is ready quickly. I fully get it. I totally struggle with it too. But this is our future health that we are talking about here, and if we don't take care of ourselves by nourishing ourselves well on the front end, we will be dealing with disease on the back end. Because of this, I'm working on putting together a template, a resource that would be helpful to you to be able to plan meals and quick things that you can throw together that are nourishing and tasty. I feel like there's a real need for that. A lot of my clients have expressed a need for like a template, something that just kind of like a mix and match type of thing. So I'm going to be working on that. Because it's a thing. It's a thing for me too. Like this pandemic has made it so food is exhausting. Like just thinking about food, what to feed myself, and now it's just myself and my husband, so that makes it way easier. But trying to think about that 3 times a day and just constantly navigating, what do I want to eat? And like, I don't want to go to the grocery store. And it's a lot of mental effort. And I want to acknowledge that because it is. And I'm working on a solution because I think there's a real need for it. And I mean, I know there's a lot of other solutions out there too, but I'm working on one from my perspective that I'm hoping will help at least some people with the simplicity, making it a little bit more simple and then instead of overwhelming. Okay, that's it for me today. Thank you so much for being here. Again, if you find this episode helpful, will you please share it and leave a rating and review if you haven't already? And as always, please reach out if you have questions or comments. I started a new Instagram account for Moderation 365. It's at Moderation 365 Coach, 365 Coach. The link is in the show notes, but I'm posting a lot of things about moderation and satisfaction and just keeping your food stable and like kind of evening out the highs and lows and the binges and the deprivation and trying to build something super sustainable that you can keep going with for the rest of your life that you feel really good doing and you enjoy. So I'm posting a lot about that on that Instagram account. And I think that's it for me today. So have a good week and I will talk to you next week. Bye.